After having a relatively easy time beating Sodden Sanctuary with just a bow, I wanted to try out the daggers. But it seems many people consider daggers to be extremely powerful in this game, and that doesn't make for a very interesting challenge run. So the idea arose, can you beat Sodden Sanctuary with only a dagger and without dodging? This has already been done before by using shields to block all of the incoming damage. So on top of the previous restrictions, let's rule out shields altogether, which leaves us with only a few ways to survive bosses. Position yourself correctly, tank with overwhelming healing, or straight up get lucky. Join me as today we find out if you can beat Sodden Sanctuary using only a dagger and never dodging even a single time. We name our character Senior Stab, which seems appropriate, and select a Thief as our starting class. Thief starts with the first dagger you can get, along with the correct skill tree starting point that we want. Throw on the Grasping Ring for extra salt drops early, and die to the Unspeakable Deep, as you can't even tank 2 hits without dying. I selected the Iron ones as my creed, although that won't matter much when we change creeds a few bosses later. Grabbing the ever so important Bandage Ring is step number 1. This item is absolutely required as we're going to need to take a lot of damage. Without the reduced wounding effect, you don't have any health after only 3 hits. I then attempted to fight the Sodden Knight, which is where our first major problem arises. The dagger sucks at blocking damage. It will block at least 1 attack fine, but this uses so much stamina that 1 extra hit leaves you vulnerable and completely out of all your stamina. On top of that, 3 heals just does not cut it for a tanking strategy. Jumping off the ledge here, we skip the first section and head on out to get some upgrades. 1 extra heal for 4 in total now. Past the Village of Smiles is the fused metal ring for increased endurance. Not that important for most of the run, but something to fill the empty slots right now. In this small pumpkin patch here, we collect the Ghastly Gourd for a new helmet. Quite fashionable, and oddly enough, the thing has decent stats as well. Using the materials we got from this area, I upgrade the starting dagger twice for much more damage. The sanctuary here has the blacksmith armor for free, which will come in handy for at least 2 bosses later on. Deep in the Watching Woods, we grab the bright coral ring for more stamina, which is actually very useful for various encounters. Behind some slimes is the Pale Charm for increased attack reach. I thought I would use this more often, considering, daggers are extremely short. However, it never made it over the several other charms we collect through the different zones. Since up above the Watching Woods is a Mossy Charm increasing attack speed, I immediately threw that on and used it as much as I could, which considering I didn't get to talk about charms when doing my bow run, I should explain them real quick. You can place them on your melee weapons as a buff. Simple as that, but it goes anywhere from increased attack speed, adding fire damage, using gold to boost attack power, all kinds of things that can make or break you depending on the boss. With a Soldier's Poem in hand, we upgrade the dagger yet again and level into 3 more dex points and 5 heals in total. On top of that, this sanctuary's healing items are slightly better for tanking than the Iron One's creed. Finally, we're ready to start the game and beat the first boss. Since I found some blessed pages, I used one here. Considering you aren't meant to have all this boosted gear yet, he gets melted. The dagger won't block all damage, meaning I need to heal constantly, but the Sodden Knight often does this jump attack completely over your head. As long as you don't move, he goes flying past you, guaranteeing a more solid damage phase. Not to mention, when he summons lightning, you can jump over for at least 2 hits every time. The more spammy he gets, the faster he goes down, actually. And with that, we have surpassed our first major obstacle. I throw more points into dex for a bit more damage, since when has that ever hurt anyone? You'll find a merchant at the sanctuary past the Sodden Knight who sells blessed pages. Those are going to be very important for this entire run, as it's a significant boost in damage depending on the boss. I bought a few and headed on to fight the Queen of Smiles. The areas so far are small enough that combat really isn't a big deal. Jumping past the Black Knights, however, is required as I suck at parrying them and they outdamage my current heal amount. Once in the boss arena, the Queen doesn't give us that much trouble. Hitting 2 or 3 times leaves enough stamina to block her attacks. Then as long as we take a heal before going under half health, we can simply run away from her more powerful moves. The biggest boost you get for a no-dodge playstyle is that healing happens both instantly and over time. Your specific creed grants you a different healing type. Each acts a bit differently, granting longer healing that's slower or faster healing that doesn't last as long. Water of Blessing is just enough of both to make blocking more than effective. With a couple red shards that push us through the end, we get aggressive and put her down. That's a first try for the Queen, which is pretty significant as those won't happen very often, let me tell you. Under this area, we collect the Bloodflower Charm for increased attack power. Useful when you can't attack that often in between boss moves. Past the woods, we join the Stone Roots Creed. Oddly enough, the only creed I ever joined, really. This is important as the red grass heal this creed offers lasts a long time. You can use it to heal through multiple hits and stack them to keep your health full at all times. With points put into level 1 heavy armor and an extra heal, I set out to improve my creed's favor. Turning in various ears from dead enemies around the world, your creed leader grants you several items. They do vary depending on which creed you're in, but I obviously just want more heals. From this, I go up to a total of 8 healing items. Significant for this point in the game, that's for sure. The Mad Alchemist actually threw me off. Using blessed pages, we deal excellent damage, and I assumed I could stand next to him and just tank all his hits. I mean, for the most part, his attacks are spaced out, and he usually summons magic instead of hitting you head on. That all works fine for me until he gets to his final phase and decides I need stun locked in between 15 different Dark Blades. So on the second try, I stuck with my standard tactic I use with regular builds. Rush him immediately because daggers attack quick enough to stagger at least twice before he attacks you. At that point, he's already half health and will begin summoning more magic. If you stick to the platform opposite of him, eventually he jumps over where you can hit him and his magic won't get you. Not a perfect fight as the purple blades are tough to avoid without dodging, but for once, a boss can't knock me off my feet. I level into class 2 heavy armor to hopefully get a nice set here soon. The Cyclops is up next, and he turns out to be the start of a new problem. Every single attack he does drains my full stamina to block. He also knocks me off my feet every single time I take a hit. With massive reach, I can't simply move out of his range to heal either, meaning I will need to heal every chance I get and only attack after he jumps over. I kept doing really well until about a quarter of his HP was left. But at this point, his attack started hitting way too fast and I was already out of heals. Simply not possible at this time. So let's head up to the false Jester instead. Again, blessed pages seem to be a solid buff here, and thankfully this is another boss who doesn't actually deal all that much damage. His much lighter attacks also don't stagger me or use up a lot of my stamina. Blocking works wonders, and here's something interesting. Bosses have moves that phase directly through you. If you're able to avoid the initial hit from being on the ground or sticking to them like glue, they switch sides without you dodging around. Doesn't really seem like much against the Jester, but it does prevent you from getting punched into a wall where you can't see what's happening. And just look at that red grass go. Take it every 10 seconds or so and you heal through everything. The Jester jumps over, missing me for the 9th time, and gets cut down for the first try. Easy boss, but still feels good. Moving on, we grab the brand, which lets you activate gravity flipping pillars, unlocking the next major boss. In the Festering Banquet section, we speak to the rundown merchant and buy Doppelsoldner armor. A full set of class 2 heavy armor, which I think is the Sodden Knight's armor actually. Way better stats on this stuff overall, but I couldn't quite give up the pumpkin, of course. With another heal, class 3 heavy armor, and some more stamina, we're getting closer to that true tank build. Considering I just got a significant upgrade in armor, the Kraekan Cyclops should be possible now. I used poison on my weapon this time since my creed sells poison coating elixirs, and well, it was pretty darn terrible on this boss, I gotta be honest, but at least it was something. The good news is my armor works wonders. I still get knocked off my feet every time he hits me, but with significantly less damage taken every time. And this exact fight right here comes back to haunt me several times over, because positioning is everything. If you can bait out jump attacks that miss you, then you not only deal damage, but heal back up in time for the next onslaught. But that's just it. You're not exactly in control of what attacks the bosses do. If they decide to roll that devious RNG die and spam one deadly move 3 times in a row, you're done. No way around it. I got tossed around here for a while, but with that boost in defense, extra healing item, and poison at least dealing some damage, I somehow managed to survive long enough for a nice opening and took it. I would have to recommend using the dodge mechanic on this boss, but well, I guess you could say that about all of them, now couldn't you? With more assault, we gain yet another heal for up to 10 and some more dex to keep our dagger on par. Up in the castle, we collect a few items that will be very beneficial. Starting off, I managed to pull off the kickflip trick here, leading to the Impen Crest ring. You need a one-handed dagger for this to work, although I probably could have just gone around. Style points are more fun though, and this ring boosts fire defense, essential for the upcoming boss. Further on up, we also grab the Mending Band, which passively regenerates HP. A very small amount, yes, but basically a must outside of boss fights, and often a nice option in those battles as well. For the Kraken Wyrm, we've got an attack charm on the dagger, fire defense, HP regen, less wounding effect, and increased stamina for our rings, and eventually blacksmith armor, although I kind of forgot to use it on the first few tries. Considering the dragon is often a massive roadblock for me, I expected the worst. The good news is, he goes far under half HP every time I attempt to fight. Better than my bow run, that's something. And while fire is usually the problem, it was actually the melee attacks this time. I can out-heal anything he can do, but if he does 2 or 3 melee hits in a row, that's it. I'm simply dead. Typically, it was the tail swipe that was getting me. As soon as that hit me, I was comboed by his jump attack or charred by fire before I could heal. The fight came down to I can't heal fast enough. But it turns out there was a simple solution to all the problems I was having. Patience. Well, that and the blacksmith armor I for some reason hadn't put on yet, but mainly patience. You see, originally I thought avoiding his attacks was completely out of the question, which is very wrong. 3 out of 4 of his moves are 100% possible to avoid by just jumping over them. His lunge forward he was rarely doing as long as I stayed in close, and for those others, you activate a late jump and attack while in mid-air. Do this, and the hits just go right under you while you're also able to deal damage. Don't get me wrong, the dragon is a tank, and it takes some time to whittle him down. But even normally, you wouldn't need to dodge all that much in this fight. Especially try and exploit his tail swipe, as you can run out of the way and then rush in for several dagger slashes that are very safe. That attack right there is how I won actually, because he started using it like crazy. And yeah, what started as an uphill battle turned into a game of patience as I finished him off with only 2 heals used. Now that I know not dodging is actually better in this fight, I might finally have a run where he goes down fast. Here's the hoping. With the wall jump brand acquired, we jump up to grab the Impin's Charm, adding fire damage to your weapon. Not better than the simple damage buff at the moment, but it is crucial to finishing this run, let me tell you. Upgrading our dagger once again and increasing dex, we're now ready for the Dome of the Forgotten. The place is relatively short, with 1 hefty armor set to find in a chest outside and the ever so important golden stone ring improving lightning defense. Basically, whatever element the boss uses, we need that ring to counteract it. Simple enough. The Untouched Inquisitor actually posed somewhat of a challenge for once, because, she can apparently stunlock you before you even get a single attack off. This should be a fun one to figure out. I tried the fire charm with lightning for a buff, but that really didn't seem effective at all. Blocking isn't often an option as that uses my entire stamina bar. Out healing the damage doesn't work that well because then I don't get off damage myself. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why sometimes I don't get hit and other times I do. Eventually, I decided to use poison, which once again isn't great here, but does at least move her health down some. Moving out of range for her swipe down attack seemed to be the best bet, and then her other multi-blade move just doesn't hit you if you're under her. The dagger's ability to dice multiple times, keeping you in the air, came in clutch, and the blade-loving fiend goes down. Finally, we upgraded into class 4 heavy armor and get some more stamina to hopefully be able to block something one of these times. Of course, the third lamb resides on top of this dome, but wow, is the run there horrible. I ran out of files to see the ghosts, and with a Black Knight in the way, I can't kill them easily. That and my dagger won't quite reach the lightning ghost here, leading to a bunch of deaths on my way up. Once finally up against the third lamb, I got extremely unlucky. With the lightning resist ring equipped, his shocks still deal loads of damage, and for some reason he was mega melee happy. If he activates lightning, I can actually hug him to get damage in and take none myself. But for the life of me, I could not get him to stop launching me across the room, which then of course meant I ate the lightning instead of dodging it. With the awful run back and subpar attempts, I decided he was simply not possible for the moment. Largely, I would blame this on me forgetting I could buy more blessed paper. Instead, I kept using the surplus of poisons, which is not useful for the midsection of the game really. So instead, I headed into the Red Hall of Cages, which considering I can't dodge, was surprisingly uneventful. I mean, 10 heals is far more than the 3 I had on my last run, and the mending band keeps me topped off even without them. The Tree of Men, however, was a completely different story, because the only thing I have for this fight is a giant middle finger. Man, was this a nightmare to go through. First phase is easy peasy. Kill the caged men as you avoid his stomp attacks on the bottom. And yeah, second phase isn't bad either, as you just need to jump to a different platform every time his metal joints make a loud sound. Hit his head and keep going. The real problem was his third phase, because this took forever every single try as my damage was subpar at best. And when he begins burning the entire side you're standing on, there's never an opportunity to attack his head. With slivers of health left to finish, I could never pull off a win. We're talking a good 30 plus tries, which took about an hour. I had on blacksmith armor and the fire resist ring to survive as much as possible, but it simply didn't matter. After every lengthy battle, it always ended with me being unable to reach his head and him outburning all my heals. Which in some way, it's funny the Tree of Men was hard for me. This is a no dodge run, and here we have one of the very few bosses you don't normally use the dodge on at all. It's about the irony, I guess, but finally, with yet another death, I figured it all out. After avoiding as much damage as possible throughout the first two phases, we enter phase 3. Here, instead of waiting for the fire to burn each side and switching to the other, we just jump. Yeah, jump and attack his head mid-air. As long as you take a heal beforehand, the fall damage is fixed up rather quickly, and you often avoid the flames too. Manage to snag a platform on the way down, and you don't even take damage either. The fight was still tough, as it's really hard to tell which side he will flame next, but with one final metal clank, the robotic monster falls apart. Okay, so Dagger has been great, but wow, I would not take it into this fight if at all possible. At the next Sanctuary, I level into 11 total heals, upgrade my armor a bit, and grab the Trickster Band for 3 extra dex points. After grabbing the key under the red hall, it's time to face the Disemboweled Husk. And let me save us all a lot of time and say, no, he's not happening yet. Why, you might ask? Well, it's not merely the awful run back in between multiple skeletons and enemies I'm forced to fight through. It's also not merely the fire raining down on me, out DPSing my healing. The main problem? His gun. 3 skadooshas in a row and I am cooked. Since it hits you across the arena, I was having no luck. Man, this run hit a tall brick wall all of a sudden. The third lamb, Tree of Men, and now this pirate all being nearly impossible. Too bad both of them are blocking important sections of the map I'd really like to be at right now. What the heck do I even do at this point? Well, I'll tell you. We go grab the best item in the game for tanking. I first head up to try and get around this pirate. Not possible, but we do find the Paladin armor, which will come in handy later. Teleporting back to the very first area of the game, we climb the tower and use the obelisk there. With some back and forth between a Black Knight here, I collect the Sparkling Ring, which does one simple thing. Increases healing power. That bad boy is going in one of my slots for the rest of the game. Now, the wiki for this game is a little underwhelming, and so what this actually affects is unclear to me. From what I found, it does not affect the healing ring, but it definitely does affect your healing items. So my already solid overtime heals now heal way better. And yeah, I still didn't think the pirate would be doable, but the third lamb sure is. Blessed paper now in hand, RNG on my side with him spamming lightning, and my newfound healing power all combined to make this a joke. I'm literally out healing his attacks, what the heck? Go from a completely one-sided losing battle to a one-sided winning battle. As long as I take a heal before going in, I'm completely safe, and this amalgamation of animals gets put down. We acquire the blue bar brand and heave a sigh of relief. The worst is behind us now, right? With the brand to walk over blue bars, we can now cross over to the ziggurat. Instead of going inside, we climb all the way up on top and then all the way over to the opposite side. Down here, protected by a dangerous knight, is the Bag of Dirt. Such a simple item, which I have desperately been wanting since I started this mess. If you teleport back to the Village of Smiles, there's an NPC hiding underneath the sanctuary who wants this item. Give it to him and he asks you 2 questions. Your answers will determine what he grants you. If you say no and then no again like I did, you get the Eviscerator, a dagger which heals you on attacks. I imagine you didn't quite hear me correctly the first time, so here it is again. A dagger which heals you on attacks. How awesome is that? Sadly, it requires class 4 daggers and I have class 1, but soon we'll be able to use this beauty. For now, I jump down into the ziggurat to face the Bloodless Prince. Our gigantic friend here managed to be a complete RNG nightmare. Every one of his attacks staggers me onto the ground. Then he's so big I can't quite get behind him unless he jumps. Meaning, if he decides to not jump, I get stun locked in a corner and beat down by his brutal bashes. And there's nothing else to tell you. No strategy to use here, just heal and get lucky. Hope he doesn't attack as often and switch to the most defensive armor you have. Stomps are the one good attack as you can walk out of the radius, but everything else is unavoidable. 11 heals was barely enough, and after like 9 tries, he took mercy on me and decided not to attack just as I would have died from another punch. None of these later fights have been easy, but this one here really was the only boss that came down to 0 strategy whatsoever. More dex to boost our damage, and darn it, we need to go back to the pirate, don't we? Remember the last time we faced this guy was before getting a boost to our healing. While it still doesn't mean the instant win, the results are far better than before. This is the point in the run where things almost always come down to pure RNG. If bosses decide to do certain moves when I'm not ready, there's absolutely nothing I can do. Does the pirate fire his gun 3 times in a row before I can heal? Restart required. Since blocking is at most okay and dodging is not an option, my best bet is to iframe through the most dangerous attacks, which means getting hit by a different move and then just happening to be laying on the ground to take no damage through more attacks. After coming back, this only took about 2 tries. The second one having one really close call as he got gun happy, but since his melee Q is really long, I stunned him out of it twice for loads of damage. Blessed pages really are the saving grace of this run right now. The Disemboweled Husk is finally finished, granting us class 3 daggers and some armor upgrades. The Mire of Stench turned out to be one of the easiest sections of the game. When I did my bow only run, this place was Death City, but daggers make minor enemies almost nothing. Spam them to death before they do anything and heal from time to time. I did manage to find the Celtic Razor behind some traps, a better dagger that grants MP leech, which isn't really useful for this build, but still fun to see more of the daggers. Actually, I think I at least saw every dagger in the game at one point in this run, which is cool since when I did my bow only, it was like 2 bows and nothing else. After literally the easiest run through this poison cesspool possible, I faced the Stench most foul. Blessed paper makes for already solid damage, and it's a matter of eating a heal, attacking, then repeat. The minions are not nearly as easy to take down as I would have hoped, but finally we ran into another boss who can't knock me off my feet every few seconds. That really is the only factor in whether I live or die. Let me stay up, and I can heal faster than anything can hit me. Heck, this is all poison here, and you can't even tell I was poisoned at all. Oh, I guess he does have a few melee attacks. He really doesn't use those a lot, does he? The more minions he summons, the more damage I get in, and boom, the third first try of the run. No dodge is actually a solid tactic here, since it's mostly about getting to one side or the other to avoid the poison. We grabbed the Mossy Ring I threw on for a while to increase stamina regen, and collect the Red Shift Brand to get rid of red bars blocking our way. We now have class 4 daggers and upgrade the Eviscerator to level 2. Passive HP regen from a ring, constant healing from my many redgrass items, and now lifesteal on melee attacks with this sick looking dagger. The build really came together here, didn't it? I quickly grab the Defender's Ring here for more strike defense when I need it and take the boat across to the far beach. Except I'm not really happy with how low level my dagger is, so let's rectify that. I head back to the first area and grab the Kismet Stone Ring for increased item find rate. Then in the Red Hall of Cages, I set to farming this single scythe enemy here for what was way too long. He can sometimes drop a Red Lord's Ear. If you take this ear to an NPC residing behind the mushroom biome and underneath the Tree of Men boss fight, she will then become a merchant selling upgrade materials. I needed a few frozen lockets, which I then used to upgrade my dagger to level 4. This is a very brief section of the video, but I must mention how long this process actually took. I had to figure out where the NPC was, how to get an ear, farm that ear out. It was a whole thing. Since I now have both of the bar brands acquired, I headed to the Golden Mask Sanctuary. Behind here is Ronin Cran, who was by far the easiest boss of the entire run. He sits there doing nothing most of the fight, and then when he decides to buff up, it takes him ages to do so. So you beat on him with poison and then blessed pages on your dagger to completely annihilate him. Now the Golden Creed, which is what I had to use here, has different heals that are not quite as good. For one, they don't heal quite as long, and for two, taking too many of them poisons you, which is not ideal at all for a tank build where I need to use a heal every 5 seconds. But with this fight being so simple, it hardly mattered at all. I did manage to finish him as he was about to rush me, which looked really cool, but yeah, easy boss first try. With that extra salt, I now upgraded to 12 heals in total. In the upper part of the ziggurat, we can collect our final brand. However, blocking our way is the Dried King. Now, the gimmick of this fight is damage over time, and lots of it. The king constantly throws fire at you that keeps your health going down. And then he has a slashing AoE attack, which looks like you can block in the lines of damage you need to stand out of. Another fight you really don't need to dodge in usually. Take a heal every 10 seconds or so and just hack and slash. I tried to jump out of his wall of flame when I saw it coming, just because why take damage if I don't have to. But other than that, this might be the easiest way to fight the Dried King. He never really gets out of our range, and with as much stamina as we have, the poor guy gets staggered 2 or 3 times in a row. For the second boss fight using this HP leech dagger, I have to say, it's awesome. Probably the best dagger in the game, actually. There is one that should be better than it damage-wise, but for general dex and physical damage, the Eviscerator is a monster. Mind-numbing slash spam over, we collect the dash brand and now enter the official end game. Teleporting back to the Castle of Storms, I jump across the blue beams here to reach Mal's floating castle. A mimic here happened to drop one frozen reliquary, which I immediately used to upgrade my dagger to level 5. Mal is not a major obstacle, as Blessed Paper in this dagger really cut her down. However, she does manage to have one attack that gave me a lot of trouble. She summons light projectiles that fall from the sky. They hit multiple times over and deal crazy damage. Best way to avoid them would be to dodge through the boss and out of their reach. But we can't do that. I can out-heal at least one full rain as long as I'm in a good spot. However, for several attempts, she RNG'd me into death by spamming the one attack 3 times in a row. At one point, I was quite literally locked in the corner with no way to escape. And while blocking can help against the attack, she was relentless with it. Even on my winning attempt, I managed to scrape by with 0 HP after getting bombarded. After a little under half HP, she will teleport around and use more melee attacks. Even then, you get staggered, and man, she's a mess. Of all the bosses I defeated, this was the one that looked the worst. Just watch me get clobbered across the arena and then blasted with magic. But hey, this is tank. If we can eat through it, we will. Fire melted her, by the way. I really need to look up her resistances, but fire seemed more than optimal. Oh, after checking, it seems she's neutral to everything except strike, which she's resistant against. So really whatever would have been fine, I guess. As I make my way through Pitchwoods, let's talk about one additional rule that will soon turn this run into a horrendous experience. The jump dash is required to access certain areas of this world, one being here in Pitchwoods and another being the floating palace we just came from. The problem with this dash though is technically it's counted as a dodge. You can use it in certain boss fights to leap out of attacks and dodge through the air in a way. So let's put an addendum on the rules here. We will allow the dash for traversal only. No using the dash ability whatsoever in boss fights though. Sounds reasonable? That is until we reach the next section of bosses where I will quite literally lose my mind. We grab the russet potato armor in Pitchwoods just in case and head down to fight the Witch of the Lake. And here's just a sneak peek of what the next 2 hours look like. I'm gonna lose my mind here. The problem with this boss is you're supposed to use the new dash rune to dodge her attacks and stay out of her balls of death move. The black streaks in particular are impossible to completely dodge without that move, and if you don't dodge them, you can't avoid the balls, which instantly kill you. Then the little eyes of death also track you just well enough to always hit. And yeah, the dash is a complete counter to the witch. Without it, you will die over and over and over, trying every possible ring combination, all the armor sets, pretending there's some rhyme or reason to which attack she does. She is literally not possible without the dash. I truly don't know what I'm gonna do here. Well, how about the Coveted instead? Nope, they're not happening either. I deal almost no damage to the axe at all, and their magic obliterates my heals almost as soon as the fight starts. Well, this isn't a good sign. We hit endgame, and the endgame was like, nah dude, you're done. With one last option available to me, I head down to Carsjaw The Cruel. The dark cloaked figure has more reasonable attacks, so this should go better. Nope, he did not go better. He can fling me in the air and then just stun lock me in the corner. I can't hardly get heals out before he attacks, and running away doesn't work since he could teleport. Why? Why are you doing this to me, game? But then I just got lucky. With the hefty potato armor to take more damage, I managed to get past a quarter of his HP where everything changed. I got hit further into the arena where I could now avoid the underground swords every time. Blocking his overhead stabs was just enough to avoid more damage, and with nothing but red shards to heal me, I finally got him down. He was a major obstacle, being the first boss to throw me on the ground every few seconds. 3 more levels in Dex, but no time to pat ourselves on the back, because back to the witch we go. Well, what are we gonna do? Because nothing has changed since the last time we met this witch, and I haven't even had a close fight yet. I started by going back to the Village of Smiles and killing a Black Knight there. He drops the Faithful Ring to boost arcane defense. Then I threw on the Paladin armor to have as much arcane resistance as possible, since that's almost all she deals anyway. And back at it we go. I won't lie to you, this was still a massive uphill battle. An uphill battle, but I'm wearing no shoes while pushing a 2-ton rock and getting poked in the back the entire time. The witch would not go down, and after 4-second tries and tries where she was on a sliver, I finally caught a gleam of hope in the darkness. Blessed pages are the key for damage, and there are a few ways to somewhat bait out certain attacks. It's not guaranteed, but generally speaking, you can force her to behave a little bit better. The red streak is the most dangerous mechanic in this fight. Initially, you think running away from it's the only way to deal with it, but doing this opens you up to the balls, which then you can't avoid. Instead, you want to jump into the streaks. This will force you under the witch instead of in front of her, completely avoiding the balls if she happens to summon them. Run away from the black eye creature attack and then jump back towards it usually works well enough, and attempt to heal every chance you get. The witch's health bar isn't actually that large, so you should be able to get her down before you run out. Then the melee attack is an issue as it pushes you out into a damage zone. Well, if you happen to be blocking and walking into her at the same time, you might phase through her and then not get hit by the next attack. If done precisely, you can avoid both melee attacks, although it's pretty rare to pull off. And never jump into the air if she's high up. This wastes a damage phase and can let her get you with melee all of a sudden. Then when she gets this purple aura around her, you need to rush into the aura, taking 1 or 2 hits instead of 8. And last but not least, have good RNG. Because after all that, she will still beat you if she doesn't spam magic balls enough, since that's your best damage phase. No matter what, this fight sucks without the air dash. I may have nightmares about this experience for years to come, but hey, I did it. Look, people, I suffered for what'd I do this for again? Next up, we have the Unskinned, out of the frying pan and into the fire, as this is a duo boss fight, where one brutish guy rushes you constantly and another mage summons magic to block your path. Both seem to take loads of damage from fire, which you can purchase imbues from the Golden Mask Merchant. But the problem is, the brute never stops rushing you, and every time he does, you fly through the arena getting knocked into 2 or 3 rays of magic, and you're no longer close enough to attack. Not to mention, the run back down here is the worst in the game, with 2 tough enemies blocking the entire path and it being long as heck. I began by focusing on the mage first, as she was cluttering the arena way too much, but it was nearly impossible to attack her with the other guy around. So eventually I switched to him, and that was the right call. The mage is a pain, but only on the chance that she hits you with the magic. With luck, you might avoid them. And it really all boils down to attacking 3 or 4 times after the brute head rushes you. That is it. You need about 1 heal for every 2 rushes, and if you don't attack enough after each, you're done. In fact, the main reason you want this attack to hit you is so that the brute will get knocked backwards, where he will then fall over, meaning you can hop up and damage him with no wasted time. After the witch, nothing will ever hurt me nearly as much, but this was the least enjoyable fight by far. You get knocked down so many times that the frustration begins to set in after like 3 tries. With the potato armor on once again for defense, I finally managed to out-heal the brute and finish him off, only to face the mage, who floats there and dies after some slashes. She can't hardly even do anything to you. Man, all these later game fights are taking me close to an hour to beat. I knew it would be hard, but this is crazy. Good news, at least we can finally max out our first basic dagger. That can be used here soon once I get another material. The next area is quite a challenge to get through. For the first time, there are enemies here I can't quickly deal with or out-heal, and fall damage is still king against the player, of course. After finding the hidden path down here, I grab a Shimmering Pearl. This can be used to get a cool weapon, but first, the trio boss. The Forgotten King. I was worried here as the last duo boss did not go well, and 3 is more than 2. But thankfully, it wasn't that awful. All 3 of them take really good damage against blessed pages, and as long as you block the range magic, the melee attacks aren't enough to worry about. I focused down the king first as he's the most aggressive. The fight got a little too close here as I was stun locked into oblivion, but with the king gone, things should go a bit better. The mage is still a huge problem, but this last knight often jumps well over your head, which I do appreciate. If only the mage would get down here. So many of these flying bosses float just out of my reach. Man, I kind of miss my bow right about now. I think the hardest part of this entire run is switching your brain off of save heal mode. I'm down to 1 heal left here, and still a good chunk of boss health remains. But nope, I gotta use that heal no matter what. The second I can deal damage, I'm good to go, but don't have HP for even a single split second and it's game over. The risk doesn't always end in reward, but better than nothing. After yet another extremely close fight, the knight is defeated and we somehow managed to first try the Forgotten King. I have had enough of mages for one day, let me tell you. With only 3 bosses left alive, I decided to finally max out my healing. Farming out all the necessary ears for my faction leader, I gained 4 more heals? I did not realize I could get this many more. That would have been nice this whole time. Well, I don't want to think about that right now, so instead I farm out 100,000 salt. Jeez, that's a lot. To transmute my max basic dagger into the Opal Tusk, a tier 5 dagger that deals both slash and wisdom damage. Actually, I think the Eviscerator is still better until NG+ due to lack of levels, but it will come in handy regardless. Because of course the Kraken Dragon is up next, and sometimes he can be quite the headache. With the Opal Tusk in hand, I further buff it with Blessed Paper and wear the Lightning Resistance ring to give me a chance. And to my surprise, he was no trouble at all. Yeah, he's got powerful magic attacks, but he isn't constantly attacking. The previous bosses never gave me a chance to hit them, versus here, where I get large sections of time to go at it, heal, and then keep going at it again. Not to mention, 4 extra heals is something I really needed long before this point. So, for future self, do the Creed Leader stuff before going to endgame bosses. Just do it. Anyway, the large Kraken has this lightning spike move where you can deal loads of damage. It surprisingly made the fight easier once he started using it, since I could just jump over them and hit a few times without taking damage. And he's another boss who can jump all the way over you, which, man, do I love that move now. All things considered, I expected an all-out war here, and he went down first try with only one brief close call. I will absolutely take it at this point. Thank you, game. Before we go down into the final boss fight, let's finish off the Coveted. I did actually look up his weakness as I had so much trouble with him before, and turns out he's weak to Arcane, which I haven't even used this entire time, so no wonder he was hard. Teleporting back up to the Castle of Storms, I purchased multiple stained pages from this merchant here. That, on top of the Opal Tusk dagger, were finally dealing some good damage against the ghastly duo. Still a slog though, as their magic is tough to avoid and they have so much HP. Eventually I figured out that the direction the ghosts start throwing magic is the direction they stay, meaning they can't turn around to hit you from behind or anything like that. If you can somehow bait them to shoot both in front of the axe, you can go behind it and deal loads of damage without needing to move at all. But what the heck, this fight still sucked. Using all my heals, I was barely able to beat them. And look at this, their magic tends to be sent out where you're going. I literally jump here into the magic. I did not expect the Coveted of all bosses to give me so much trouble, but I guess that's what you ask for when you remove 2 major mechanics from the game altogether. I don't care to count how many times I was on no HP and still managed to beat the bosses of this run, but it's gotta be too many. Behind here, of course, is the Bloodflower Ring for more damage. I wanted this the entire time, and thankfully we now have it. As soon, it's gonna save my butt. Well, if you know anything about Sodden Sanctuary, you could probably guess that the Nameless God was not going down easily, and you would definitely be right. My first try, painfully enough, was my most successful attempt. With like 1/5 of his health left, I never got to this point again. The problem? Every single attack he does prevents me from both healing or attacking. His grab attack throws me far away and crushes my HP. His magic projectiles are instant kill if he's in an awkward spot, and his regular melee swipes pin me down for 4 or 5 combos. It came to a point where I truly gave up and went all the way back to the drawing board. I need more damage and more defense. Turns out the Gold Mask Creed has just that. Going back up and joining this illustrious club, I complete the Creed Leader steps and receive 4 Gold Wine Potions. These increase attack and defense. However, they also introduce a new problem. The heals from this Creed poison you if taken too fast, while also providing worse healing than the Red Grass did. Will more damage and defense beat out strong healing? No, it would not. Now I can't survive long enough, even though the damage definitely felt better. So I went to grinding, gaining salt and levels to boost up my wisdom stat. The Opal Tusk dagger scales with dex and wisdom, theoretically offering more power if I can get both up. This turned out to be a flawed cause, however, as we will soon find out. The final step in this journey was to equip the potato armor and upgrade it a total of 4 times for all 4 pieces of the set. Oh, and I also found out where the Frozen Tome item was so I could fully upgrade the Eviscerator. Maybe, just maybe, all this extra stuff will fix this mess. Oh, and I finally looked up the monster's weakness, that being fire. Turns out I was using the wrong thing this entire time. So after 2 straight hours of preparation, it is time. The Opal Tusk turned out to be not the best option due to my build, making the Eviscerator far better. My upgrades to armor for some reason let me block more while using less stamina. Not sure if that's an actual mechanic, but it seemed to work really well. And then with a bit of luck, I can draw out 2 specific attacks easily punished. First would be the Magic Barrage. Turns out if he activates this while on one of the walls, all the projectiles explode before reaching me. Plus, his grab attack can be avoided by wall jumping over it, which looks like a dash, but it's actually a completely different rune ability. All of this added on top of some decent gameplay on my part was just enough to get the most perfect run possible, having severely high damage phases back to back, healing through the poison, phasing through his body, and burning him alive with fire and the fire charm equipped. It all finally came together, and the island has now been purged of evil. That, ladies and gentlemen, is beating Sodden Sanctuary with no shield, no dodge, and no jump dash. Oddly enough, things started out relatively well. All the bosses took a bit of effort, but nothing seemed impossible. Then endgame hit, and I thought this might not actually be possible. Knowing what I know now, I would definitely stick with the red grass heals, do all the creed leader stuff as soon as possible for max heals, and upgrade my armor first before anything else. But life is anything if not a giant lesson, and today we learned true tank is more than viable in Sodden Sanctuary. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll catch you next time.